Welcome to Litigation and Capital.
You're listening to Litigation and Capital with Steven Mirsky, partner at Mirsky Corporate Advisors. Each episode, we break down high-stakes legal issues affecting companies like yours, those earning $10 to $100 million a year, so you can turn complexity into leverage and protect what you've built. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and I'm always happy to be joined by Steven Mirsky. Steven, welcome.
Thanks, Kevin. Nice being back.
So we're going to talk today about scaling smart, the legal strategy, mistakes that can undermine growth. So let's start here. When companies scale fast, revenues jumping from 10 million to 50 million, what legal blind spots do you see the most often?
Some of it's not going to be stuff that is necessarily obvious, right? Like, let's take corporate governance issues aside for just a minute, right? Because that's the last thing people are going to focus on is like, oh, did we do our minutes, right? They're focused on growing. So what does that mean? That means we're going to be entering into new contracts, getting access to capital, and adding body. So where are we going to go wrong in that scenario? Well, you're most likely not going to be compliant with employment laws. There's invariably something that you're going to do that is mistaken.
Because you're moving so fast trying to bring more people on?
That are, let's say that you're a startup company full of 20-somethings and you've been given millions of dollars, right? What could go wrong?
So think about my 20s a lot.
Yeah, right? I mean, we're going to get productivity by adding nap pods to our business. Like, okay, yeah. Sure. So, wanting to make sure that your hiring procedures are correct, making sure that your, people are clocking in and clocking out, making sure that if they're salaried, they're actually able to be exempt from the overtime requirement. These are really critical factors. If you're in a manufacturing setting, are you safe? Are you OSHA compliant? If not, watch out, right? Then you get the issues of, the financial issues of, are you burning cash? And that is frankly the biggest one, right? If I'm growing so fast, am I going to be able to acquire the equipment, acquire the goods, do all the things I need to do, and recognize revenue fast enough, right? If I can't do that, then I'm adding a whole bunch of stuff and I'm getting a lot of, industrial space, a lot of employees, my ego's huge. But if we can't recognize that revenue quickly enough, we're not gonna be able to pay our bills in 6 months. How are we gonna get around it? And
yeah, cash flow's tough. It's a tough thing.
And when you're growing, it's an emotional high, right? Like you look at what we can do. We're crushing it. Let's go. That's tomorrow's issue.
It's never going to end.
Yeah. And tomorrow comes, right? And then the other thing I would look at is client concentration. Where are you deriving your revenue from? Is it one major client? Is it two major clients in the same vertical? Well, are there macroeconomic trends that could suddenly just kneecap your business? Those are huge problems, right? And no one thinks about getting kneecapped until it's too late.
Can ambitious growth strategies unintentionally create exposure, like financing terms or partner disputes?
Well, the financing terms, similar to what we were just talking about, am I growing too fast? Have I burned all my cash? Are my investors, depending on how I raise the money, is it debt or is it equity? Are my equity investors seeking a return? Can I do something in time? But partner disputes is really big because, frequently what happens is you have founders that, they're buddy. Hey, bro, we're going to split it 50-50. Everything's going to be rosy. And then, hey, this schmuck is not doing anything. I'm doing all the work. Now I'm resentful. Yeah. And so it gets worse if you're growing fast and, one partner feels that they are owed more of the reward for the burden that they exerted. And that's very common.
It feels almost cliche, but it happens all the time.
It happens all the time. That's one of the reasons why I never recommend 50-50. I always, at the end of the day, a business is a command and control structure, right? You're organizing people to do things for the benefit of this entity. And so you need to organize people in a certain way. And to do that, you have to have a decision maker. The buck has got to stop somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you can't decide that at the outset between you and one or more partners, how on earth are you going to decide that when you're making a lot of money? Because no one wants to let go of power. That's just not within the human psychology.
Yeah. Boy, we could go do a whole series on that. So for your role, how do you help in shaping capital strategy, not just reviewing documents or guiding outcome, or I'm sorry, not just reviewing documents, but guiding the outcomes?
I think, let's talk legal counsel generally and what I do specifically. Legal counsel generally, they're there to make sure, make sure the inmates aren't running the asylum, right? Like that. We want to make sure that, hey, have you looked out for this risk? Are you doing these things? I was just reading an article the other day about, I forget what company, but they had a social media post where they said, our lawyers told us not to play this music and to make this post, but we're doing it anyways. And then they were just slapped with a $42 million lawsuit.
What?
Using that clip as evidence of the breach. So,
42 million?
Yeah, 42 million. So, making sure that you don't do dumb things because, people aren't, the law works in a different way than I think common sense. And then, the other thing is to make sure you get connected to the right people. One of the things I love to do with all my clients or just prospective clients or just people, I don't really care, is to connect them with other professionals that can help. I've got a Rolodex of professionals that I can reach out to that, hey, you need a forensic accountant, boom, here you go. You need someone to do evaluation on you, boom, here you go. That is a really great tool for any a lawyer to bring to their client.
Do you really have a Rolodex?
No. Well, I guess if you count your phone as a Rolodex, but yeah.
I still remember that. My parents had that with everybody's phone number in it. Just roll it and you're like,
yeah. I'm catering to the elder millennial audience.
There you go. There you go. Gen Z, just look it up.
Yeah.
How often do high growth companies underestimate the governance risks that come with expanding teams or boards?
Frequently, always, almost uniformly, right? Yeah. Governance risk. Well, here's something that we can think about. So people love to get equity. I'm giving equity. I want equity. Okay. And my position is usually like, all right, 10% of bupkis is still bupkis, right? Does this thing generate any money? But what happens with this giving away of equity is you're creating a nightmare of a cap table, right? So now I'm going to have 50 different shareholders who gave me, I don't know, between millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're going to want something, right? And I'm going to need to make decisions with them because they're going to be shareholders of my entity. And then, how does the composition of my cap table impact the board? What does the board look like? How do I make decisions at the board level? Those are all really complex things that people tend not to give a lot of thought to until they're in some sort of funding round and they're like, oh shit, we're not going to get as much money as we thought we were.
Yeah. And again, probably goes back, can be attributed to those 20-year-olds at the startup you were talking about, right?
Yeah, or even, it's just corporate governance is not high on people's list of things to do, right? Hey, we could paper the file over, right? But depending on what you do, what your objectives are, and where you want to go with future growth, you're either going to impact it negatively or positively. If you're not keeping your house in order, right? People are going to want to buy a clean house, not a home makeover that you're going to have to knock down the walls and readjust the floors, right? You're going to get a better price for a clean house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good analogy for sure. What are some common mistakes that you've seen throughout your career with private equity or lender negotiations that could have been avoided?
Well, I think on the equity side, I think one of the big issues is rollover equity. Rollover equity for me, if I'm representing, the founder, is a promise of future payment that I'm not likely going to get, right? Mm-hmm. And so, thinking that you're going to get the payouts that you're going to get, I think is a different issue. And I think not being realistic about what actual outcomes are going to be is really important. For instance, I represented a company that went through a major transaction, and they got their next, the first close of the transaction occurred, and they got their new growth targets. No investment in, their existing infrastructure, but their growth targets were to, grow by 50% organic growth in 1 year with the same infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. That's not realistic. So if that's the case, am I likely going to hit my earnout targets? Probably not, right? So think about that when you're going into it. With lender negotiations, if I'm thinking about debt, well, I think from the borrower's perspective, you need to disclose, right? It's in your best interest to disclose everything, good, bad, and ugly. Do not withhold anything. Do not make a material
No one wants
misstatement of
surprises
fact.
later. Yeah.
Period. Right? I mean, there's severe consequences if you were to do that. The other thing is from the lender side, there's a lot of pressure at the end of a fiscal year or at the end of a calendar quarter to just get a deal done, right? You want your bonus targets, you want your bonus metrics, get the deal done, get it in the door, let's go. That sort of short-term psychology clouds judgment, right? Is this deal really the best deal? I don't know. And then also, let's say you're in-house with the lender. The challenge there is you want to make sure, are you getting the right information from your sales team? Who is the individual that's talking to the borrower? Have I gotten everything, or am I just buying into the story that I'm being told? Independently verify the information that you receive.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Actually verify the information you're giving. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty smart.
Yeah, I'd hope so. But when you're just trying to get a deal done, and it's like, I've had a deal close. It was like 6 p.m. on December 31st, right? You don't care about anything at that time. You're just trying to get the deal in the door and done.
Yeah, get to your New Year's party.
Exactly.
How can legal structure either support or stall growth when a company is seeking outside investment or even preparing for sale?
So this is a pretty meaty question. The foundational question, it depends on where we are in the life cycle of this deal, but let's assume that we're starting a new entity, right? And I'm starting a new entity and I want to grow. Sure, I can have an LLC. That's fine, right? But you're going to have impediments to growth once you reach about 10 million in value, right? And the issue there is, an LLC can be either more like a partnership or more like a corporation. It's very flexible. And because of these inherent flexibilities, the operating agreement itself can be really, really fine-tuned to waive certain rights or do this or do that. In general terms, it just creates complexity, right? And if I'm lending, I'm private equity, I'm looking at hundreds of businesses. I don't want nuance. I don't want surprise. I want to know a sure bet, right? And so that's where a corporation comes into play. If I'm a corporation, I've got statutory duties, right? Maybe the application of the law changes from state to state in certain things, but generally speaking, I'm going to have shareholders, directors, and officers. Each of these layers of the corporation have rights and obligations that are set forth by statute, right? We know exactly what they're going to do. There's no guessing. And so, that's one element where I'd look at that. Now, I could argue the other side of it. Let's say that I am a conglomerate and I've got, a big holding company on top, and I've got each of my plant locations in an LLC. I want that. I want those plant locations in an LLC. Why is that? Well, I want the pass-through rights to get up to the corporation, but also I'll be able to just sell those assets to somebody or create a JV or do whatever I want. So it depends on really what you're trying to do, what the objective is on the transaction. But if you are a startup company, I just recommend to just be a corporation, get it out of the way, because you're going to have to convert it at some point.
Interesting. Okay. And what's your advice for executives who might think that legal strategy is more of a cost center rather than a growth enabler?
I would say that those executives may not have met an attorney they can trust, because you need to be an advisor that helps the business grow. You can't just be a roadblock, right? A business owner, an entrepreneur, right? They're focused on what's possible. And so as a legal advisor, you need to say, okay, well, you can't do A, but you could do B and C. Here are risks and objectives. What do you think? The other thing about cost is you have to look at it as, hey, if I make it you should look at it as an investment. I'm investing in the security of the business because it's going to save money down the road. For instance, let's use that example from the other case. If that marketing department had listened to their lawyers, they would have saved the company from a $42 million complaint, right? Which now you're going to waste time and money and fees, legal fees to defend it. And then you're probably going to have some sort of settlement, right? All of that stuff could have been avoided if we had just spent enough time and resources on legal. The other thing too is that the business units, depending on the size of your business, let's say you're an enterprise size company, your legal team is always going to be saying, we need more resources, we need more resources. And so you have to balance, giving the legal team resources with meeting your objectives. If you're trying to increase sales velocity and reduce the time to close, maybe it would make sense to invest in some sort of contract management software to allow the team to speed up their review. Maybe it would make sense to look at AI to help them at least get an initial draft done, and make those investments in your company because it'll help facilitate closing transactions throughout the rest of the business.
And that $42 million lawsuit also says if you do get counsel, listen to them. Think about what they're saying.
Don't knowingly disregard counsel.
Oh, people. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today on Litigation and Capital. To connect with Steven or learn more about how Mirsky Corporate Advisors can support your business, visit MirskyCorporateAdvisors.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave us a review and share it with your leadership team. We're going to give you lots of great info down the road. Steven, great having you here again. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.